Kajillionaire, released in 2020 and written and directed by Miranda, is a film where queerness, and more specifically, the need for interpersonal connection, is an inherent but subtle aspect of its plots and theming. The film surrounds a family of cheapskate con artists, Robert, Teresa and their daughter Old Dolio, a daughter who they neglected giving a loving, familial upbringing to, instead raising her to be a master con artist in herself, albeit one who struggles with seeing anyone in her life as more than just an asset to use and to get money to pay the notably cheap rent and the old leaky office she lives in with her parents. This life is soon upturned with the introduction of an enigmatic to Old Dolio stranger, Melanie, who begins to question the previously unquestioned functions of the dying family, and who takes a particular affection towards Old Dolio herself. While the lesbian romance between Old Dolio and Melanie is an aspect of the film that becomes more apparent as it progresses, it's one that, on first watch of the film, you may see as a bit out of the blue. However, upon further analysis, the film's examination of the need for human connection is one that is all too familiar to queer people, and is something that is almost inherent to the queer experience. Old Dolio is a character who is severely lacking human interpersonal connection. Her parents act notably cold and unfeeling towards her. They say she is not of gentle birth.
Games, $12.99, Target, easy return.
This is not a cheap tie. Well, you can't see it because you're not of gentle birth.
They say she wouldn't know anything about having tender feelings.
When she has tender feelings, you wouldn't know anything about that. I know.
And during a scene where they pretend to be British to scam an old lady, Teresa says Old Dolio is their daughter but Melanie is their adopted daughter, saying that they were given one and they chose one, referring to Old Dolio as the one they were given, as if she is an unwanted gift they'd rather have returned rather than their daughter. Throughout the film, Old Dolio comes to the realisation that she has never felt that interpersonal connection, let alone familial connection, and that she needs to feel it. She first realises this after the first scene in the positive parenting clinic, where she attends because the person who doesn't want to attend, Kelly, pays her $20 to take her place. There, she learns about the breast crawl, where, if a newborn baby is placed on the mother's abdomen, it will naturally crawl up to the breast and form a bond with the mother. When Kelly asks about the breast crawl, Old Dolio responds by saying she shouldn't do it, saying
breast
that...
Crawl.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's cool, huh?
No, you don't want to baby it like that. It'll get all...
and then trails off, seemingly coming to a realisation upon saying that you shouldn't baby a literal newborn baby, that her parents have robbed her of a loving childhood and real familial connection. As a result, she begins to look elsewhere for that connection. She tries to get that connection off her mother, but repeatedly fails and is shut down very coldly by her, and even mocked by her parents in some scenes.
Mother-daughter getaway? How the fuck does that help us get the rent? God. Come on, think!
Did I crawl up or was I put on a cot? A cot. That's what you want. And what else? Me to put you on my abdomen?
That scene is actually one of the pivotal moments in the film in relation to its characters and how Old Dolio approaches her ever-growing need to indulge in human connection. In this scene, Teresa asks Melanie,
Don't go, hun.
which shocks Old Dolio because...
Hun. You've never called me that.
Teresa goes on to say that they, as a family, don't
call you hun or sweetheart or baby. We don't wrap up little birthday presents with ribbons. I don't want... Yes!
and seemingly won't do that ever, even under the offer of performing those duties typical of a caring family, in exchange for the full $1,575 Old Dolio just secured. Melanie responds by saying that she will instead take the money in exchange for performing those loving duties for and with Old Dolio, and then takes Old Dolio in her hand and runs off, Thelma and Louise style. Teresa listing these actions typical of a family who have genuine connection and love for each other, and then saying that they are a family who are seemingly proud of actively doing none of that, shows to Old Dolio that that familial connection is not one she will ever get from her parents. And so, from this point on in the film, Old Dolio appears to look elsewhere for that connection, specifically though, to Melanie, being as Melanie is the only person to consistently and non-judgmentally express genuine love and affection towards her, which leads her to fall completely in love with Melanie, as if leaving her unstable relationship with her parents is the beginning of the breast crawl that results in her intimate bonding with Melanie. There's an interview in ID magazine where writer-director Miranda July and non-binary artist Bobby Salva Menwes discuss the film and the inherent queerness in its characters and plot. In this interview, July explains how she didn't grow up with the idea of stackable pancakes being a part of her childhood, and that any pleasure that might come from silly things was frowned upon. Menwes responds by saying that July's personal experiences bleed into the film in a way that is very relevant to themes I am approaching in regards to Kajillionaire, queer connection and experience. They say that indulgence and stepping into the unknown is exactly how someone who is told that they can't have what they desire would react, be it stacking pancakes or having gay sex. They go on to say that, if you've been told it's wrong or inappropriate, then find a moment to give yourself permission to feel and fulfill it, that it's earth-shattering. Throughout Kajillionaire, what we have been shown and what we can extrapolate about Old Dolio's upbringing seemingly leads her to believe she is incapable of feeling interpersonal connection, and what her parents say foregrounds that belief in her head. Then, when she is at the masseuse and the masseuse responds to her desires and shows a level of caring towards her, she reacts with trepidation and a little pushback, but nevertheless steps into that unknown. Then, when Melanie enters her life and treats her with genuine care and affection, she slowly but surely indulges herself in it, and through that becomes a more confident, assured and happier person. Old Dolio's first notable experience of interpersonal connection with someone being that of a queer romance is not incidental either. Throughout history, queer people have been told and implicated through the cishet standards of society and institution to hide themselves and suppress their desires. So in places such as molly houses in the 18th and 19th centuries, or homo-societal institutions and standards such as terms like friend of Dorothy, and modes of dress like the hanky codes come about, queer people indulge themselves and surround themselves, leading to the laying of the foundations of queer society. In terms of those homo-societal institutions and standards, a few are represented in the film in interesting and subtle ways. For example, after the first positive parenting class, Teresa asks Old Dolio why she's chewing on a toothpick, and Old Dolio says that
Guy at the class gave me them.
Teresa responds negatively, saying that
When a man gives you wood, anything made out of wood, he's saying, you give me wood.
Much later, in a scene where Melanie and Old Dolio meet with Robert and Teresa in a restaurant, Old Dolio subtly gives Melanie the toothpick. This is not only one of the more overt portrayals of queer love between Old Dolio and Melanie, but it is also very reminiscent of when lesbians in the 1920s would give each other violets to signify sapphic, romantic interest. Violets and the colours pink and purple in general have been very prevalent throughout the history of queer identification, and they do appear in Kajillionaire too, in the scene where Robert is buying a jacuzzi. This scene takes place after a scene in a diner, where Old Dolio shows love and affection she has for someone else for the first time, gently peeling off Melanie's nails and cleaning the nail beds after accidentally breaking one of them. Melanie falls for Old Dolio in this moment, as it's a genuine display of gentle, caring love from a person who seemingly struggles to feel and display it, and Melanie's experiences of love throughout the film thus far are not caring or genuine, as they are only from creepy guys looking to have sex with her, and her mother who is portrayed to be ultra-materialistic to a detrimental level, with there being little familial connection there beyond materialistic desire and possessions. In the jacuzzi scene, Old Dolio talks with Melanie in private for the first time, away from her parents.
What?
Old Dolio tells Melanie to
wear more clothes. You're making everybody feel uncomfortable.
But, following that previous showing of affection from Old Dolio to Melanie, and the fact that Old Dolio's notably blunt and unfeeling parents never say that Melanie's clothes are making them uncomfortable, just rather that they are surprised someone would wear it, it's easy to say that Old Dolio is actually aroused by Melanie, and feels uncomfortable and a little confused as a result of feeling these feelings for presumably the first time, which is something that Melanie seems to realise, as instead of feeling offended, she smiles a wry, knowing smile. And this first portrayal of queer interest between the two takes place against a backdrop of a wall of violets. In addition to this, there are smaller inclusions of queer socialisation and identification throughout the film, like when the masseuse, who was the first person in the film to show physical care towards old Dolio, is wearing a dusty violet-coloured shirt, and how Melanie actually changing how she dresses around old Dolio to be more cognizant of her wants and desires is a representation of the modes of dress that are integral to ideas of homosocialization, similar to wearing hanky coats or flowers on lapels. Throughout Kajillionaire, we meet old Dolio, we learn of her rough, love-devoid upbringing, and watch as she comes to learn of her needs for human connection, and what in her life prevents her from feeling that and indulging in her desires. We also meet Melanie, who helps old Dolio to finally feel interpersonal connection, and true, genuine love, a love that is all-encompassing and joyfully queer and sapphic. Additionally, old Dolio's exclusion not only from wider society as a whole, but also specifically from enjoying the frivolity of life and the joy of love and connection with another human being as a result of her parents and her upbringing echoes that of the societal and institutional exclusion queer people face as a result of homophobia, transphobia, and a widespread lack of queer visibility, a lack that is unfortunately entirely intentional as a result of the centering of cis-het values, views, and standards in society, and the subsequent erasure of queer peoples, queer history, and queer society.